All right, we are, about a year into the build or rebuild, and I'm tired of the steering wheel. I've got a combination of tennis racket tape here, and then this is the fabric tape that you use in the engine, and it's lasted a long enough time that, it is what it is. But we're changing all this out and talked to my guy here at Higgy's. Shout out to Scott, because Higgy's is fantastic. You want your Land Cruiser work done down here in Phoenix, or even drive it down, give it to Scott and the guys over at Higgy's. They're fantastic. But he suggested this, and it's got all of the instructions. Watch the YouTube videos. It's got the tool, it's got the tape, it's got the thread, it's got the needles, and it's got the beautiful leather that, as you can see here, it's one of those focus things, is pretty much a damn near perfect match. So gonna take all this stuff off, clean everything up, and then start following the video. The video is on YouTube, and it tells you how to do all the stitching, the tape, and all that. So here we go. All right, steering wheel is uncovered. I cleaned everything off with isopropyl, and you can see this thing is a mess. The previous owner didn't really love it that much. This doesn't feel too rough here. This is a little interesting. I'm gonna see what it looks like when because it's the seam. So if the seam on the cover matches up, we'll see what it looks like. I'm just worried if there's gonna be a dent, or this area right here is gonna show. So next is we're gonna pull this out. And you can see, sunlight wise doesn't look, but when you do that, it is sweet. So gonna match it up quick. All right, so it's kind of tight when you get it on there, so it's gonna take a little bit. What the video shows you is that you line up the seam with the middle, so lined up there, and then you line up these seams. Let me get this focused with this, so when you put these together, they line up with the seam in there. And then you go around it and you make sure all of these corners match up first when you fold them in, right? So they're tucked around the seams. And I really suggest you go and watch the video, because it's leather, and leather moves and it stretches. And if you've learned how to stretch if you've learned how to stretch leather, or ever stretched a little bit of leather, right? You know that you work it. I learned it as a young kid at the, shout out to Jack Booty Bellows. Take a look at that. Bellow maker, a long time ago, New York. And all the seams line up here. So what you start to do is you start to tuck these things in first down into here. So that's why you got to get it all lined up and make sure that these corners wrap nicely, so that when you tuck this in first, it kind of sets it in place. But now that I've got it here, in order to keep it from sliding, next step is this two-sided tape. So we'll start to do that. Okay, halfway in, and a couple of tips. So if you got a Harbor Freight or any place around, I've got these rolls of Velcro. I use it all over the place. Double-sided, so right, it hooks to itself. But found it super helpful. So this is the double-sided tape, and I haven't taken the other side off here, but when it peels off clean, and then you fold it in and you make sure, right, that the seams hit the seams. So you do this on both sides of the leather, and then when you pinch it, you'll see it looks just like this. So you got it wrapped there, the tape's there, it's tucked in there. I haven't done the top of the steering wheel yet, but all the way around. So you tuck it in around here, This is by no means going to be perfect. I am not a leather master, but this is really just going to look crazy. And then of course, when you stitch it and you pull, excuse me, the leather will pull tighter. So it's all tucked in around on the front and the back around here, all the way around it. And then I'm just going to tape this up, and then I'm going to start the stitching process. And again, watch the video, the lawn key video, and it's a guy, I think it's in Japanese or maybe it's in Chinese, that it'll show you, and it'll show you the lengths of the thread that you should have. I think it's 3 times the length of this that you use. And then you're just going in and out of each one of these threads. You're looping it on the top. You don't go under, you go around and over and then back through and over and all the way around. And then you do one at a time, one section at a time, tie it off, burn it, and then move to the next section, and then move to the next section, and then do all the way around the top. So this is going to take a few hours, but well worth it. All right, the first part done. A little bit of shadowing on here, but you can see it's pretty tight in here. I got to tuck it in with the tool, but over here it's nicely done. This looks phenomenal. I mean, it's unreal. It's going to take me a while though. I don't even know what time it is. It's 10 o'clock. I started at about 8:30 to get it all prepped, so we're an hour and a half in. So once I get these 2 sides done, then this is just going to be a rally. What I'll say is, you can see some of the stitching here. It actually looks pretty good and is consistent. I've got glasses on, and you can see there's a gap here, and it is what it is. I'm not going to stress too much of this compared to what you just saw it looked like, but there's some things here where you could wrap it differently, and you can see how I figured it out on this side where you can get it tighter, where you could double wrap some of these loops instead of just doing one by one here. So a little bit of a gap, but you know, what are you going to do? Still sit back here, look at it from a foot back or driver's position. Okay, 3 sections sewn in, stitching. You got to get a little creative when you start doing this. You know, you learn as you go. I did this side first, and you learn at the end of it how to get this tied up here, and then I just did this side, and you learn how to sort of crisscross, and instead of just going back and forth constantly, you go back and forth, and right around here you wrap it again so that you can make sure these come in tight, which is going to be what's going to have to go in here and then over here. And honestly, there's plenty of thread, so don't be afraid to use a ton of thread to make sure you got enough. So 3 times the distance from all the way around here, and then the thread is, you know, 1 loop this way, another loop back this way, and another loop back this way. And then I gave it like 5 more inches so that I had plenty to go through, and then make a knot, and then you burn the knots on the end. But honestly, when you do something like this, 3 times this is a ton to keep pulling through. So I'm kind of wondering what that's gonna look like. So we'll see. Finished product. Took about 3.5 hours, maybe 4. But you know, get some headphones, get all the stuff out, and you can see all the stitching. Here's the trick. You can see on this, so 1 piece of thread, 3 times the length of all of this, plus like 5 inches. 3 times the length of all of this, like plus 5 inches, and 3 times the length of this for 5 inches. To do 3 times the length of this whole thing around here, you'd be pulling thread for a mile. So didn't want to do that. So what I did was I did from here to here, and just this seam, and I tied it into this, tied it off in this seam, got it done in this seam, and when I had it done in this seam, tucked it under here, and then I started here new. You can sort of see how the thread changes here, and then made it 3 times this, And actually what I was planning on was going from this seam to this seam, but when I got to this seam, I had plenty enough. I still had, you know, the full, it attached, and then did the 3 times this, and I had plenty to do it. So I ended up going from here all the way around to here and getting it all done and tied in. And, you know, look, some of it's not perfect, but scroll back to the beginning. I got to tuck this in a little bit. Scroll back to the beginning of the video. Take a look at this mess. And it's beautiful. Highly recommended.